My mother abused me all throughout my childhood and ruined my chances at college. So I got my revenge by ruining her life. In the time I was staying with my mother before I got kicked out, I got by with little petty acts of revenge. Peeing in the Lipton iced tea she drank, rubbing her forks and spoons between my butt cheeks before I served her dinner, ignoring her screams for help when she had kidney stones. But by the time I got to high school, I turned to alcohol. I resented her, and the negative atmosphere affected who I was as a person. I started to be cold and uncaring. She started kicking me out every few months, telling me to find somewhere else to live by age 15. She sent me away to a different country for a year and tried to keep my passport, but I made it back to the U.S. with the help of the embassy and my stepfather. She'd already left by that time and found some other dude. I came back senior year with no credits for the prior grade, which ended with me getting a GED. I spent most of the time I could with my best friend and started working dead-end jobs. I was terrible at saving, as I had accumulated loads of bad habits while growing up, so it didn't make much difference. She eventually told me that if I went to college, I would always have a place to live until I finished. Cue my first 2 semesters at a 2-year college, I maintained a 3.7 GPA. My teachers loved me, and it was my escape. Towards the end of my second semester during finals, I came home late one night around 10 p.m., and my mother yanked the door open, screaming in my face, asking when I'll move out. I'm slightly drunk, and decide to ignore her and walk to my room completely. If I opened my mouth, that day would be the day I blew up and cursed her out. I've rarely ever raised my voice at her because it never ended well. Now at this point, I'm 19, and I've been doing school full-time with no savings. I get to my room. She rips my door open and starts yelling. I say nothing and stare at her. She walked away and called the police on me, saying she thought I'd murder her and my younger siblings. I don't know where the hell she got that idea from, as she's the one who's nearly killed me many times. I packed everything into a duffel bag and left 5 minutes afterwards. I failed all of my finals because I couldn't make it to my school. Things kind of spiraled, and the next 2 to 3 years were me on and off homeless. I survived the best I could in a big city with no college degree and made a lot of bad choices due to my bad habits. Eventually, I found a profitable hobby that gave me meaning, and through that, I started to work my way up. I got my own apartment, had a full-time job, and did my hobby on the side. I hadn't kept up contact with my mother at all, but my younger sister, who was old enough to have a phone, found me on social media, so I saw photos and such. She didn't have it anywhere near as bad as me, but she did get beaten occasionally. My mother reached out via email, all smiles, asking how I've been. I've always been envious of most people's relationship with their moms, so I gave her a chance and a call. We talked for a few minutes and everything was civil and seemed like things would go okay. But then she asked me what I've been up to the last few years, and I told her honestly that I had been homeless for a while and struggled a lot after what she did to me, but I worked my way out of it. She literally laughs. She laughed for a few seconds in a very condescending kind of chuckle, and then said, "I never did a thing to you, so you don't know what abuse is. It's your own damn fault you were homeless. So how about you?" But by that point, I hung up. I was speechless and fuming. "I don't know what abuse is." "All right then. I've spent too damn long letting you destroy my sanity. Now is the time." There was a few things my mother didn't know. One, I knew for a fact that the current well-paying job she had was gotten on lies, as she never got her college degree, and lied about it on her resume. 2, I had access to all of her email accounts and cloud storage accounts since I was the one that set them up when I was younger, and she never changes her passwords. Lastly, she definitely wasn't aware that from 13 years old and on to the last time she hit me, I took photos of all my bruises, marks, wounds, and bloody noses, saving them to my computer and then Google Drive. On top of that, my little sister had been sending me photos via social media of the bruises she got from my mom. The first thing I did was compile all of those photos and videos into one folder. I then reached out to CPS in my city and explained that my siblings were being abused, how I was abused in the past, and that I had mountains of proof. Since I've called the cops on my mother before, and the thing that happened with my older sister, there was immediately a home visit. They arrived almost a day later with the police, and coincidentally, my mother was literally in the process of beating my younger sister when they were knocking. Cue an emergency removal of all my siblings from the house and my mother getting arrested, though she was released hours later. I was getting a play-by-play of the events because my mother's best friend is a Blabe Ormuth, and everything my mother said, she told her son, who relayed it to me without either of their knowledge. I sent CPS all the evidence, and there's a legit case against my mother now. The next day I emailed and then called up her job to inform them that she had lied about having a very necessary college degree, as well as inform them of the current events in her life, which sparked a background check. She was fired days later. Bye-bye to a $75,000 salary and a blacklist in the only industry you know how to work. I then spitefully deleted every cloud account and email address I ever made for her, which was all of them, which I'm sure will make keeping up with a lot of bills nearly impossible. I then anonymously reported her to the IRS because of the tax fraud she committed for years by claiming people's children that weren't hers with a lot of detailed information since I lived with her while she did it. So now my mother lost all her kids and her job. I'm meeting with a caseworker from CPS next week to talk more about what happens moving forward, but I do know they're not going back. I don't know how she's going to pay her mortgage now and survive. I'm sure she's going to get a call from the IRS who will be looking for a few $1,000s she owes them. She also has to go back to court in a few months. Not exactly sure what she was charged with, but in the meantime, I swallowed my pride and moved into a homeless shelter in my city, specifically for people with jobs and savings. I'll be able to continue saving while I work on bettering myself as a person. I created an action plan and mapped out all my goals and how I want to achieve them. Up until recently, I wasn't even planning on being alive. Sorry if that's too dark. I honestly always had these thoughts, wishing my mother would have finished the job with me and made life easier. But as of late, I'm becoming more and more curious about what I'm capable of if I give myself the chance. I've been able to visit my younger siblings and have gotten to know my little sister a bit better because of the experience. I've also only drunk 3 times in the last 4 months, compared to every other day in the past, which isn't great, but it's a change. My younger siblings are still with CPS, but I can't go into detail. My mother was supposed to go to a hearing to get them back, but things got complicated. My mother's best friend's son, who I've known for 8 years, does his best to relay all the crap my mother tells her while they talk on the phone all day. Things had gotten worse for her. She hasn't been keeping up with her mortgage payments. Her fiancé, my youngest sibling's dad, is no longer her fiancé anymore and is trying to file for custody. I heard she was a wreck and then went ghost, but it didn't make me feel better. There weren't supposed to be any winners. I initially just wanted to tell someone for once, but one thing changed my mind. Something I was not expecting months after I set this all in motion. A phone call from my mother. In the past, seeing her calls, even after moving out, would set me on edge, but that hasn't been the case lately. It was just another thing that happened. Just another event. She always had my number, but never reached out. Even when things first started going downhill, I doubt she even gave me a second thought. My mother is gone. A few weeks after set my plan into motion, the state I'm in brought felony charges up against her. She left the country shortly after and went to her home country in South America. I have no idea how she was even allowed to leave, but they didn't take her passport. She avoided specifics on that part. She mentioned staying with a family friend temporarily and tried to frame it as a short vacation. She didn't even start off with a hello. She started the conversation by ordering me to go somewhere quiet before launching into a sob story about how things have been going for her. This is after months of no contact, after laughing at me for being homeless and denying she ever abused me months ago, just yammering away like it was nothing but I let her talk. It was surreal. I felt so cold just listening to her talk. It was like talking to a stranger. She mentions losing out on so much money and how she doesn't know how it all happened, and then finally she brings up the topic of me and my siblings. She brought up my little sister and the night of the emergency removal. She starts complaining about how she misses my little sister and brothers. She says that it's gonna mess up tax season. And then she had the audacity to start trying to convince me that I should go talk to the caseworkers for her to back up her claim that she never abused them or me, and I should know that. She said that to me. After everything, of all people, 9 minutes into the conversation, like nothing ever happened. But it wasn't anything new. Of course I cut her off, but at that point my mind was already made up. I asked her if she remembered when I used to make iced tea for her all those years. She was a little thrown off, but said yes. I paused for a few seconds before slowly telling her in detail about all the ways I sabotaged her Lipton iced tea. She tried to interrupt me once, but I didn't stop talking. I told her about how I'd always put too much sugar and she'd never taste it and keep drinking more, which was why I always insisted. There was just silence on the phone, but I know she was listening. I told her to wait until after dinner when I got home from school to shower so I could rub her spoons between my butt cheeks for maximum damage and how I'd mix it into her food to mask it. At this point, I'm not even sure she's listening anymore, but I'm still describing specific days I remember doing it that I know she would remember. She finally loudly interrupts me, screaming at me disgusting, evil things. She cursed me the way she used to back in the days when she was standing over me with an extension cord beating the skin off of me when I was younger. She's blaming me for ruining her life and how she wishes she had a better child, all without knowing that I directly caused the destruction of her current life, though she's speaking about the past. I just let her waste her breath. She couldn't touch me or my siblings. It only lasted a few seconds. Now I remember spending years daydreaming of all things I'd say to my mother if I had the chance, but I just bottled it up with all my other baggage and kept trying to exist. When she finally shut her mouth, I calmly told her, "Look, Mom, you don't know what abuse is, and honestly, it's your own damn fault this is all happening to you. Also, my bad for pissing in your iced tea." Then I just hung up the phone and blocked her number. That was the last day I drank. I haven't talked to her since. I'm not sure she's aware, or maybe she is, how bad of an idea it was to leave the country with all this going down, even if it was for a few weeks. At this point, I'm done with her. I don't want an apology. I just want to move forward and be a better person. I know that's hard to believe after everything I just told you, but it's the truth. I try my best to put as much positivity into the world and share it with the people around me as much as possible. But screw her. I don't know if she knows it was me, but I didn't tell her. I'm sure she can guess, though, if she really tried. Anyways, that's my revenge. It's still actively screwing her life up, but I'm not taking any active part in it. I wish it weren't like this. I wish I had a real family that loved me and I knew how to love back the right way. I wish I had a real relationship with my mother and none of those things happened. I wish I could have turned out like one of the happy people in the world, but I can spend all day wishing, but none of it could change. So I have to accept what happened and go on with my life.